I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, it's been a bad week for Senator Jamie Pedersen of Washington. So, of course, he's turned to his trusty allies in the legacy media for help. Plus, did the Trump administration overstep in blocking an Associated Press reporter from an Oval Office event? And state government wants to track your every move. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. I'm Brandi Kruse. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I realize the show is called Undivided. I'm going to say something very divisive right now. If you were a pedophile, if you were a pervert, would you do anything different than the state of Washington is doing right now? Than Democrats in Washington state are doing right now? And this is an issue that continues to get national attention. I mean, I haven't seen a controversy stick to the Democratic Party in our state almost ever like this. It's been a very bad week, certainly for Senator Jamie Pedersen, the Senate Majority Leader, but also just by and large. You've seen, I think, this swell of pushback and a lot of continued national media attention toward the Democratic effort to erode parental rights. And I want to be very clear here, because I think there's some conservatives online who are always like, they must be a pedophile if they're supporting these policies and these things. I'm not calling any of these Democrats pedophiles, obviously. I don't want to get sued, but I also have no evidence that they're pedophiles. But what I do believe is if you were a predator and you were in charge of state government, I just don't see what they would be doing different. And there's multiple things that I would point to. We just discussed on the show yesterday, for some reason, Democrats are pushing a bill that would ease post-incarceration requirements for individuals who try to have sex with minors, rape minors that they meet online. Like internet sex predators, the people Chris Hansen used to seek out. Why is that a priority? Why is that something that you're thinking of? I mean, literally making excuses for people who are caught up in these net nanny stings, where they think that they're meeting a minor for sex, and it turns out to be a cop. And in the eyes of Democrats, that's not as bad. It's so strange. And then you see this systematic stripping of parental rights, where it seems like the government is doing everything it can to put distance between parents and their kids and step in the role of parents, both in public schools and as the government. Oh, you want to get an abortion, you want gender-affirming care, well, go ahead and run away from home. Senate Bill 5599, which is already law, will protect you. We can have you in a shelter. The government knows where you are, but we won't tell your parents where you are. I mean, I genuinely mean this. If you were a predator and you were in state government, would you be pushing different bills? No, this is the kind of stuff that you would be doing. And so it's incredibly concerning. And I mentioned it's been a very bad week for Senator Jamie Pedersen. Just as a reminder, he, for whatever reason, does an interview with Fox News about this Democratic effort to unwind the Parental Bill of Rights that was passed last year via a voter initiative to the legislature. And he has two cuts in this Fox News story that people found, understandably, very disturbing.
Kids over 13 have the complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice. They don't have a right to have consent about that. Young women have, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, okay? And parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance.
I think there was a couple things about that interview that just won't die for Senator Pedersen. I mean, here in Washington, we've known that they completely disregard parental rights, that they've been giving over many, many years more and more rights to even young children as young as 13. So what he said there isn't a particular surprise to us. I think a lot of people nationally looked at it like that is very extreme, because that is an extreme position to take. But in Washington state, this is just par for the course. But I think it was the way in which he said it too. Like, of course, 13-year-olds, they're old enough to get pregnant and they're old enough to make their own decisions. We'll have more on that in a minute. 13-year-olds, parents have no right at all to know what their kids are doing. It was really the way he said it. This just complete sanctimony and disregard for why would parents ever think they have a right to know what's going on with their kids mental health wise or from a medical perspective or whatever it is. And so, of course, those clips blew up online. And Senator Jamie Pedersen has made a couple efforts now to try to put out the flames. The first thing he did is, of course, his office was inundated with emails, and he responded to all of those emails with a single line. Basically, don't blame me. This has been the law in Washington state for 40 years. I was just telling Fox News what the law is, which is just a cop-out, and as we've said over and over, does not reflect the reality that, yes, we passed a law in 1985 that gave kids access to certain mental health care without parental consent, but it was very mild stuff like, hey, you have a right to sit down with a therapist if you need to. You can get treatment for addiction if you need to, or see someone about addiction. What he doesn't capture in that little line that he sent out, because he can't be bothered to explain his position or defend his position to all these people who inundated his office with emails, is that over many years, Democrats and Senator Jamie Pedersen himself have voted to expand what kinds of things and what kind of mental health care that these kids can get without parental consent. Now stuff like gender dysphoria and gender hormone therapies all bunched in with what were really mundane mental health things passed in 1985. So it was very disingenuous. So that didn't work. And the anger over this did not die down with his little one-sentence emails to, oh, I'm just saying what the law is. So who do you turn to as a Democrat in a state like ours when you are trying to shift the narrative? Who do you turn to as a Democratic politician when you are under scrutiny and you want to change the narrative? You turn to your buddies in legacy media, because they'll always be there for you. They'll always be there to pick you up and prop you up when you're down. And that's the case for Senator Pedersen. There were multiple stories. I think Como News had a story, the Washington State Standard had a story, and of course, King 5, Woke 5 News had a story. And all of them were about the same gist. It was, Senator Pedersen was taken out of context. Big bad Fox News took him out of context. Woe is him. This from King 5. Washington Senate Majority Leader says, quote, on youth mental health was taken out of context. And it goes in here, and all the stories were similar, which just tells me that this was a very concerted effort from Senator Jamie Pedersen's office to reach out to sympathetic, left-leaning media organizations so that they would all run stories with him accusing Fox News of taking his statements out of context. So King 5 News' story was, as they usually are, very surface level, just giving Jamie Pedersen essentially a platform to say, oh, Fox News took me out of context, without really questioning whether he was actually taken out of context. Because apparently Senator Jamie Pedersen's staff recorded or taped the interview with Fox News. And so they were out there pushing the transcript and trying to say, see, I was taken out of context. So Washington State Standard and Jerry Cornfield do a lengthier piece about this, but the gist is still the same. And this is what bothers me, is like, Senator Pedersen can go to a friendly news outlet and say, I was taken out of context. And rather than judge for themselves whether there's any validity to that and whether they should dedicate a story to it, they're just like, okay, we'll put that out there and let readers decide for themselves if he was taken out of context. But there isn't really any pushback to what he said, any pushback to the reason that people are so angry over what he said. So in the story with the State Standard, I'm going to read quite a bit of this for you because I want you to understand that he was not taken out of context at all. The context is very clear. After reading the full quotes, I'm still just as upset by what he said today as I was yesterday or the day before. And I don't think that it justified a news story where he gets to whine that Fox News took him out of context. So again, this from the State Standard. Washington Senator sparks fury with description of 40-year-old law limiting parental rights. It says, on Monday, in an interview with the Standard, Pedersen said it was the first time that, quote, somebody deliberately edited my comments to mislead. He said, I don't think I'll be accepting interview requests from Fox News anymore. It says Dan Springer, the Fox News correspondent who interviewed Pedersen, rejected the idea that the senator's comments had been misrepresented. Dan Springer told the Standard, Senator Pedersen is being completely dishonest. His response to my question was a defense of the Democrats' actions by paraphrasing the law in Washington state, which says parents are not entitled to be notified if their 13-year-old child receives mental health treatment or if their daughter of any age seeks an abortion. His soundbite was not edited. So here you have, again, setting up this back and forth. Jamie Pedersen says, a quote, without any proof, It's presented as a truthful statement when Senator Jamie Pedersen says, this is the first time somebody deliberately edited my comments to mislead. So it's like the Standard is just accepting this notion that Fox News and Dan Springer, because apparently they're inside his head, and they know that they deliberately edited his content, his quote to mislead. So here's the full quote. Again, the transcript that was provided by Senator Jamie Pedersen to the Standard versus the clip that aired on Fox News. And there's no doubt that the soundbite was edited down. I mean, obviously they did a full interview, and this was a cut of that interview that was played within a larger story. So, Nicole, can you play really quick, just so we can compare the two? Just the Senator Pedersen soundbite where he's talking about kids over the age of 30, not the pregnant one, the other one.
Kids over 13 have the complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice. They don't have a right to have consent about that.
Yeah, so that was what aired on Fox News. And going back to the transcript that was published in the State Standard, it says the question that was asked of Jamie Pedersen was, where do you come down on the right of parents to know what they want to know about their child's academic life, their healthcare, everything? Here's what Senator Jamie Pedersen said. If it's about their mental health care, we've drawn a line, I think, at age 13 in the statute and say that kids over 13 have a complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice, so they don't have a right to consent about that. How is that any different? So Fox News edited out that first part saying, oh, well, if it's about their mental health care, we've drawn a line, I think, at age 13 in the statute. And then he goes on to say the sentence that aired on Fox News. So it's not out of context at all. It's very clear that in the Fox News story, Senator Jamie Pedersen is talking about the law in Washington state. And in the full quote, he's talking about the law in Washington state too. So it's not taking out of context. So the other quote, of course, Nicole, if we can play the one on abortion.
Young women have, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, okay? And parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance.
Okay, so that's what aired on Fox News, and according to the Washington State Standard, here is Pedersen's full response. When you're talking about a young person's health care, it's a lot more complicated, right? Young women, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, and parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance. How is that any different? He just shortens the answer. But lengthening the answer would not have made this any less bad or any less controversial or provided any additional context. So what he's trying to do is put this false flag out there that he was edited out of context when he was very much in context. And I'll also point out, so in the abortion comment, they start this section of the Standard story with Jamie Pedersen complaining about the anger over what he said. It says Republicans in Washington fueled the social media firestorm on Pedersen's comments. It's always Republicans' fault. Some who weighed in online kept it political. Others got personal. Pedersen and his husband have 4 children, and he said the attacks are taking a toll on his family. I signed up for this. I'm not going to be too upset. The hardest part is the effect that it has on my husband and my kids. My kids are reading about how I bought my twins in San Diego on the black market. I don't have twins. I have triplets, he added. They were born in San Diego, so at least they got that right. So here you have Senator Jamie Pedersen waxing poetic and sad about a parent, which I don't want any politician's kids to ever be the subject of any sort of smears or lies or really any fodder whatsoever online. But I can't help but point to the irony of, all of this is about parents who are upset that Senator Jamie Pedersen wants to take control of their parenting away from them, wants to alienate them from their kids in ways that can be incredibly destructive and hurtful and detrimental. And then you got Senator Jamie Pedersen, who's like, oh, this has been really hard for my family. You know how hard it's been for families in Washington state? You know how many stories we've heard of parents who have lost contact with their children because of this allowance under law to be separated? I mean, to let your kid run away from a shelter and the state won't tell you where they are? So I'm sorry, Senator Pedersen, I don't want anyone's kids to be wrapped up in anything. But you want the same thing that parents all over the state are asking you for. They want to be able to keep their kids safe. They want their kids to be shielded from things that can be potentially harmful and detrimental to their lives. They're asking no more than you're asking. And somehow you don't realize that. So I hope that does away with the whole notion that Jamie Pedersen was taken out of context. But of course, it didn't stop his buddies in the legacy media from propping him up and pushing out these headlines, suggesting, and if you just read the headline, oh, okay, the Fox News clips were out of context, no big deal. And you don't actually sit there and say, were they out of context? And that's the job of the media, right? Senator Pedersen's saying something, but look at it for yourself as a member of the media. You don't have to just push it out there and say, you decide for yourselves. No, you can look at that and say, the context of both is the same. And I would also say, Senator Pedersen continues to try to get out of this by saying, whoa, 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 I'm just regurgitating state law. Okay, yeah, that's fine, but people are disgusted by the law. That's one of the things we're disgusted about, is not the way that you communicated that and the fact that you said it. We are disgusted about the law, and it's a law you support. So yeah, we're mad at you. We're mad at you and other Democrats who not only support these laws, but who have expanded these laws rapidly over the last 5 years in particular. So you just regurgitating state law doesn't absolve you, because you support that state law and you actively want to expand that state law. And as we speak, you are the chief sponsor on a bill to roll back parental rights. So you don't get out of this one, Senator Pedersen. And again, I would say, if you haven't read it, we posted a couple days ago a guest op-ed from State Representative Travis Couture, a Republican, where he explains, look, even though this is part of a 40-year-old law, the law has changed significantly since then when it comes to what kind of access to mental health care kids 13 and over can get without parental consent. He wrote, once that meant, in 1985, talk therapy and substance abuse counseling. But now it's expanded to include gender-affirming medical treatments, psychiatric medications, and reproductive services, all without parental involvement. And so Representative Travis Couture does a wonderful job in that piece of explaining that it is an absolute lie and it's intentional gaslighting to just say, well, this has been the law since 1985. It has not. Part of it has been the law since 1985, and you've expanded it significantly. And I would also say, when he says, Nicole, can you play the clip again on girls getting pregnant? I don't know how many times I can listen to Jamie Pedersen say this nonsense over and over, but pregnant one.
Young women have, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, okay? And parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance.
Yeah, so parent, no right to know if your kid is pregnant, if your kid gets an abortion, because that's not going to have a substantial mental toll on them if they're as young as 13 years old. And let's just go through the worst case scenario. Again, look what's happening in schools. They want to keep all these secrets from parents. So your kid goes to school and they want an abortion. The school's going to help them work that out. Nobody's going to tell the parent or whatever it is. So we've had all these cases, a lot of them in Washington state lately, about sexual misconduct on the part of teachers, public school teachers. There was just some coach that was convicted of a disgusting slew of crimes. So that is not a rare thing in our state. We hear these headlines all the time. So what happens? You're a pervert teacher and you rape a student because you can't consent as a student to sex with a teacher. 13-year-old student, you get her pregnant. So you can, by law, everybody keeps that secret from parents. Nobody's asking questions. Oh, it's okay. You want to terminate your pregnancy? Teacher tells you, we can help you with that. So a teacher rapes a student, gets them pregnant, and because of the laws in Washington state, that teacher can help that child get an abortion. No parents ever have to know, and everything is just swept under the rug. Call me crazy, call me a conspiracy theorist, but when you look at everything in the totality, that is not beyond the realm of possibility. Now, one other thing I just want to say, and I struggled with whether to even bring this up today. I asked Nicole, I was like, is it fair to bring this up? Because again, I'm not saying that Senator Jamie Pedersen's a pervert. I think that's an easy thing for, a lot of conservatives do that. Oh, the Democrats are pedophiles or whatever it is. So I'm not saying that, of course. I don't have any evidence. And it's like a very, very vague, all-encompassing term to apply to a group of people. And I take predatory behavior and child predation very seriously, and I would never just throw that label around. But at the same time, when we talk about judgment here, right? So our friend Ari Hoffman posted this on X yesterday, and I can't even believe I hadn't thought of this before, because I covered this when it was happening, when I was covering City Hall in Seattle as a mainstream journalist. Senator Jamie Pedersen was the chief defender of former Seattle Mayor Ed Murray, who was accused of all these sex crimes and preying on young men, etc. So as all of that was happening at the time, and I remember this very vividly now, as all of this was happening at the time, and more evidence came out, more and more accusers came out against Seattle Mayor Ed Murray. Guess who was right by his side, defending him the entire time? State Senator Jamie Pedersen, one of his fellow Seattle Democrats. And he even said, and I think this is this a Seattle Times story? Yeah, I want to read some portions of a Seattle Times story from February of 2018, as this was all coming to a head with Ed Murray. And it talks about, I was at this press conference. I guarantee you can see me in this picture if it's in here. I was at this press conference when Ed Murray said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't, continue to, under all these accusations, serve as mayor. The headline was, "Relief as Ed Murray exits public life, pain as Seattle copes with scandal." It says, Jamie Pedersen, a Democratic state senator, said some of his Seattle constituents have demanded that he retract past statements in which he called Murray a good lawmaker and mayor. Pedersen has refused. He said in an interview describing Murray as a human being just like the rest of us, made of a unique combination of attributes and faults. The Seattle Times went on to say, Murray's lasting work should be recognized, Pedersen said. I would strongly disagree with the idea that his legacy of public service can be erased by these allegations, even if they are true. There are a whole lot of people in Washington who enjoy employment and non-discrimination protections that they would not have had or wouldn't have had as quickly but for his leadership. So this is 6 years ago when Seattle is embroiled in one of the worst political scandals we've ever had, with horrible accusations coming one after another about Mayor Ed Murray that forced him to walk away from public life. And there cheering him on essentially was Senator Jamie Pedersen, saying, and I can't make that up, even if they are true, that it shouldn't have ruined Ed Murray's legacy. Can you think about that? Even if it's true that Seattle Mayor Ed Murray preyed on young men, it shouldn't ruin his legacy. That's a very strange thing to say. That's a very concerning thing to say. And so now this is the state senator who is spearheading the effort to tear parents away from their kids, who's on Fox News saying parents have no right to know. Oh, if you're old enough to bleed, then you're old enough to make your own medical decisions if you're a woman. And I think that's relevant because it's a judgment issue. This is a guy who said that Ed Murray's legacy should still be intact even if the allegations against him were true. Is that the guy that you want deciding what kind of rights you have as a parent? Is that the guy that you want deciding what kind of autonomy your 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds have? I could tell you if I had a kid, it would not be. I wouldn't want him within 100 miles of making any sort of decisions about the rights of me as a parent or the rights of my child. So this scandal is not going away for Senator Jamie Pedersen, no matter how many of his friends in the legacy media he employs to have his back and will push his narrative, no questions asked. I will also say, and I can now say I will be in Olympia this Saturday for a parental rights rally on the steps of the state capitol. It's happening at noon, again on Saturday the 15th. We're expecting a pretty good showing, so I'm going to be there. And, I'm kind of like, it's interesting. I'm not a parent. And so sometimes I feel like, man, I should be talking about these issues so much. I don't have a dog in the fight per se. But no, this has to do with government overreach. It has to do with abuse of power. It has to do with using our platform to stand up for parents who don't have a platform to push back against these things. And we will do that 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if you are just in horror at what's happening in Olympia and these systematic efforts over many years to strip you of your rights as a parent and to give 13-year-old children autonomy to make life-changing medical decisions, then I would encourage you to join us. And again, I will be there on the steps of the Washington State Capitol in Olympia this Saturday at noon. Maybe Senator Pedersen, you can come too. Why don't you explain to the crowd of parents why you believe you can parent better than they can? I'm sure it will go over well. All right, I have encouraged you guys, if you're looking at your family's budget like, gosh, we got to cut from somewhere. What are we going to do? Well, I would encourage you, don't cut out that yearly family vacation just yet. Take the first Mark challenge. That's the first thing that goes, right? Avocado toast, yearly family vacation to Disney World.
Yeah, or maybe scale back the vacation.
Scale
just
it
a road
back.
trip,
we're
staycation.
Just driving over and gonna swim in a lake. But don't do that quite yet, because you could save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year by switching your insurance over to First Mark. So here's what the First Mark Challenge entails. You literally just schedule an appointment with them, talk to them over the phone, maybe takes an hour of your time. You go over your current insurance, talk to them about your insurance needs. They go out, they shop the market. In a couple weeks, they come back to you with their recommendations. And they're either going to tell you, hey, the insurance you had is great. We can't beat those prices for you. And then you have peace of mind knowing you have the insurance you need at the best price. Or they're going to say, like they have for so many undivided viewers and listeners, actually, if you switch over to these carriers, we can save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year. That was the case for Eric. Eric emailed us and says he finally took the First Mark Challenge after managing his own auto and homeowners policy for decades. He said he was of the school of thought, why do I need a middleman when I can work directly with the insurance companies? He said, well, First Mark quickly showed me the error of my ways. They're now saving him 30% on his auto policy and 70% on his homeowners policy. So he's like, I can't believe I waited that long. And he says, everyone needs to give First Mark Insurance a call. He says, I did, and I'm truly richer for it. I love it. I love it so much. So take the First Mark Challenge today, firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you, and you never pay First Mark anything for their services. So if you're like, oh, I'm not fancy, Brandi, I can't have an insurance broker. Yeah, you can. Having an insurance broker isn't fancy, and First Mark doesn't charge you anything. So go for it. All right, a couple things happening in Olympia. So our daily action alert a couple days ago, I lose track. And I will put today's in the comments on Patreon. Some people are like, Brandi, I'm not seeing them, and I'm not going to send out a separate email because whenever I send out too many emails, people are like, I'm getting too many emails, whatever it is. But I will absolutely put in the comments of today's episode as soon as we get done. So we had one of the top 10 bad bills we're following this legislative session is House Bill 1334, and it would raise your property taxes. So right now, your county, for instance, can only raise your property taxes by 1% without going to you for a vote. So they want to change that across the state to allow local entities to raise your property taxes by up to 3% without a vote of the people. I mean, that's significant. So you'd be talking about a 3x increase in terms of the percentage increase. So it would lift the statewide property tax levy lid. And I should also note that the levy lid was put at 1% by voters via initiative. But of course, they don't care about initiatives or your opinion at all. So whatever it is. So this was our daily action alert. I'm not going to take credit for this entirely, but holy hell, a lot of Washingtonians reached out to lawmakers through that simple little form and told them hell to the no. So there was a lot of public testimony on this. This is Washington State Young Republican Chair Anthony Mixer, who spoke in opposition to House Bill 1334.
The taxpayers have once again spoken, Madam Chair. 128 signed in pro on this bill, which probably were the special interest groups, and 12,124 taxpayers signed in con on this bill. This is an estimated 99 to 1% ratio in taxpayers' favor. That should send a clear message that the taxpayers do not want this bill, this time in higher opposition than last year when the same proposal was brought up in the Senate. Taxpayers feel the crushing weight in taxes that the state already levies. The young people that I represent are already struggling to afford to buy a home, and with this, any of them that do have a home find it harder to live in said home. Madam Chair, Washington is the fourth most expensive state to live in, and I sincerely believe that this majority is wanting to shoot for number one. You all talk about having a regressive tax system. This would be regressive. The taxpayers spoke loud and clear. Listen to them. Thank you.
Hell yeah, Anthony. I love Anthony. He's so sweet. He's my buddy. He did a great job. But yeah, more than 12,000 people registered con against House Bill 1334, and like 120 people registered in favor of it. And as Anthony Mixer rightly guessed, it was special interest groups and elected leaders who would benefit from an increase in tax revenue.
I'm King County Councilmember Jorge Baron, and I'm testifying pro on House Bill 1334.
My name is Snohomish County Councilmember Megan Dunn, here in support of the with the Association of Counties in Snohomish County.
Paul Jewell on behalf of the members of the Washington State Association of Counties testifying today in support of House Bill 1334.
I am Joe Bushnell, a council member for the city of Tacoma, and I'm here to strongly support House Bill 1334.
I'm Angela Burney, Mayor of the City of Redmond. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 1334.
Jen Burbidge, current president of the Washington Recreation and Park Association.
Candace Bach, representing the Association of Washington Cities.
I'm Mary Lou Pauley, the mayor of the city of Issaquah, and I'm here to express my support for the bill.
Yeah, the people who support raising your property taxes are the elected leaders who want more money so they can fund programs that tickle their fancy, that lift their skirt. Is that what it is? Blow up your skirt? What's the, is that on it? Tickle, we'll stick with tickle their fancy. And then you've got 12,000 Washingtonians who registered. 124 compared to 12,000 to say, no, don't raise our property taxes, because property taxes are already crushing. And we're in this budget cycle where people see, and I don't know how much of it is because of what's happening now at the national level and this exposure of Doge and all these dumb things that our hard-earned money is getting spent on, but we see it here too. All the money that's gone into the homeless industrial complex to yield no results. All the money they spend on DEI and other feel-good policies and funding, legal assistance and housing for illegal immigrants, whatever it is. And regular people who are working a 9 to 5, just trying to get by and pay their bills, they have to bear the brunt of the cost of all of those fantasies, of those progressive wish lists, and they're done with it. But here's the thing, and I will tell you, even with 12,000 plus people saying no, and 100 or so people, mostly mayors or elected leaders who want the money, saying yes, Democrats are going to push forward with this thing, because until there are electoral consequences, they don't care. They've already shown all the attacks on the initiative process this session. The effort after 8 months to undo the Parental Bill of Rights, what 500,000 people signed in favor of, be damned. They don't care. And until there are electoral consequences for them, they won't care. So we'll be tracking this, but good job, you guys. I can't say all 12,000 were our people. I think a lot of them were, so good job.
I saw it reported multiple times yesterday that was record breaking, and I said
record breaking.
I'm gonna take credit for that.
Okay, we'll take credit. Fine. So our daily action alert today, which has already gone up across platforms, it will be posted on Patreon in the comments after the show is done today, is for House Bill 1921. And you know what, Nicole? Dory Monson called this earlier than anyone.
Yep.
So Dory Monson was always so good at predicting, sort of based on what were little things that were happening, what the end goal of the government was. And he predicted years ago that they wanted a transponder in all of your cars so they could toll you for every road, for everything you do, pay per mile. Were you going to say something about it?
Oh, and Ferguson. I mean, all of these things that he predicted are right now coming to fruition.
And you would know better. I mean, you were there with him, but he talked about this issue a lot. And it's what they're trying to do. So House Bill 1921, which is our action item for today, would be a road usage fee. So it's pay per mile. So, I mean, this is something they've been talking about. Now, I think, and I continue to believe, there would be a lot of issues with implementation, but let's just read from it again, a Democrat-backed bill. The legislature believes that a more direct road usage-based funding method would more fairly and accurately correspond to motor vehicle use of public roads. The road usage charge rate for participants in the voluntary and mandatory road usage charge programs is 2.6 cents per mile. So they want to charge you 2.6 cents per mile. And one of their And look, there's some, I understand aspects of this. They've pushed these electric vehicles, right? And what was the chief argument they had? Oh, get an electric vehicle. You'll do what? You'll save money on gas. Oh, yeah, you won't have to pay those gas taxes at the pump.
Right.
But now they're not paying gas taxes. So they're like, well, we have to charge them for using the roads in some form or fashion.
But
so they're like, well, let's put it in your car.
There's already EV charges that you have to pay to make up for these taxes. But now they're saying, oh, we need another source.
This is more reliable in their opinion. So according to the bill's text, there's a couple things here. So this would be rolled out in phases. So 2027, 2029, there'd be a voluntary program. Electric and hybrid vehicle owners could opt into paying a per mile fee instead of their registration fees, which Nicole just stated. So you have an added fee if that's the kind of car. car at registration. 2029, the road usage charge would become mandatory for those electric and hybrid vehicles. And then 2031 to 2035, there would be a gradual inclusion of gas-powered vehicles that have high fuel efficiency. So it's like, oh, you're not gassing up very often, so we got to get you in there. And so that would start with vehicles that are at like 40 miles per gallon. So the other thing is, how would they collect this? And this has always been an issue. So you could have a transponder, which I'm not letting a government transponder in my vehicle.
I don't even let the insurance people do that.
Well, it's like, well, no. you can, yeah, when they give you a little plug this in and we'll track your driving. I don't think that'll help me save on insurance.
Not going to help me either, do that. So regardless, no.
You can either do that or you can do an odometer reading once a year. It sounds like it's sort of an honor system thing where you just say, here's where my odometer's at. So when they realize that doesn't work, so the transponder wouldn't be mandatory right now. But when they realize that the odometer thing isn't working, or people aren't complying, or people are lying, or whatever it is, they're going to go to the transponder. Mm-hmm. And then once they have the transponder and you are paying per mile, they're also going to add an additional toll for more and more roads because it makes it easier for them. So you have to look at not what are they doing now? What does the bill say now? You have to look at, as Dory Monson was very good at doing, what is this bill a precursor for? What it could be the worst intention of Democrats to want to do this and then squander money on the back end, right? And they say that if you're an electric vehicle, speaking to the charge you brought up, if you're an electric vehicle owner and you decide to do the voluntary opt-in pay per mile, then you'd get the money back on the registration fee, etc. So I asked you guys in our daily subscriber show poll, which we'll get to later, so go take it if you haven't. Would you want to just keep paying gas taxes? Would you rather do a pay per mile situation? But again, there's so many issues with this. Because if you do a yearly odometer reading, right? How do you know I didn't go on a cross-country trip to Florida? You don't.
Nope.
So I don't want to pay per mile for miles not driven in Washington State. That's not fair.
Although that's a good get out. So if they ever figure out that you lied about the mileage, you just say, well, that's because I went on a cross-country trip.
Yeah, but the thing is, when more and more people are going to do that, they're going to say, I did every national park, right?
And that
so
will be
when the
excuse.
odometer reading is not, when the odometer, money collected from odometer readings is not at the level they need it to be for tax revenue, then they'll do a transponder.
Then it's mandatory.
So no one can lie. It's going to be mandatory, 100%. So that is our daily action alert, because it is going to have a hearing tomorrow, I believe it is. So you've got some time to weigh in, just pro con. Literally, it takes 20 to 30 seconds. So look for that daily action alert across platforms, and we'll have it up on Patreon after the end of the show today in the comments of this episode.
They really are out of control.
They're totally out of control. They just need someone to go down there and tell them no. And Ferguson's not going to do that. Nope. He's acting like he is. He just said he's going to veto any budget that does not have his $100 million promise to invest in law enforcement. I should have talked about that on the show today. I can't tell you how much that pisses me off. Because here's this guy, I don't even have to revisit it with you guys, anti-cop, all these things, never spoke up for law enforcement during defunding, and then he campaigns as a public safety candidate and says, I'm going to dedicate $100 million to recruiting more police officers. And now he's using that. He has to make good on that promise, right? It was one of the biggest promises of the campaign. So he says, I'll veto any budget that doesn't have my campaign promise in it. Even though that campaign promise is worthless. We will not be in a better situation when it comes to police staffing when he leaves office as we were when he came in. Because it's really not about more money. People don't want to work for you because of your long history of hating law enforcement, of putting them on trial for murder, of not speaking up for them because it wasn't politically advantageous. So yeah, I mean, will some people take the money because they're like, well, either I'm not in law enforcement, or I can just say, I'll transfer to this department and get a $50,000 check and put my time in. So some are going to do it, but it's not going to make up for the losses that we have suffered because of people like Bob Ferguson. So, I'm going to veto the budget. It's like, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation if you had stood up for law enforcement as one of the most prominent Democrats in the entire state back when defunding was happening. Maybe Democrats would have said, let's just lock it up. And then we wouldn't be in such a bad situation. God forbid, right? All right, let's see. I've talked about my success on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program. We were joking on the show yesterday that I've done literally any fad diet. You name the fad diet or the crash diet, and I've done it. And the only thing that has ever yielded me long-term results is the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program. I've lost 40 pounds on the program, most of that in the first 2 months, and that is now 2 years ago that I started that program. So I did 2 months, very hard work, sticking to a specific regimen that they give you. And then after that, like, you can enjoy life. You can have drinks on the weekends with friends. You can enjoy vacations. It's all about balance, and it's all about healthy lifestyle changes. There's no drugs, no injections, no strenuous workout routines. It's about teaching you what to eat in the right portions and then how to make some healthy lifestyle changes so that you are able to keep the weight off for life. So do what I did with so many undivided. I want to add up all the pounds lost by undivided viewers and listeners. It has to be like more than 10,000. So call Dr. Ryan Coogan or reach out to his team, eastsideweightlossklinik.com. They have a handy little scheduler where you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation where you just go over the program, see if it's right for you. I mean, not every weight loss program is going to be right for every person. You'll know pretty quickly whether it's something that you think you can stick to. So eastsideweightlossklinik.com, eastsideweightlossklinik.com. Yeah, call Dr. C. He'll chat over with you what the program entails. All right. So I have a criticism of Donald Trump today, specifically in his dealing with certain members of the legacy media. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. All right. When Donald Trump is deserving of criticism, I am more than happy to provide it. And I think this is one of those instances. Like, look, I'm shedding no tears for the legacy news decline. I think that they made their own bed and they can lie in it. Is it lie in it or they can lay in it? They made their own bed and they can lay in it. Lie in it. Who cares? You know, at the end of the day. Whichever one is correct, that's the one I mean. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they serve a purpose. And we have a First Amendment in this country. A free press is vital to holding elected leaders accountable. Now, do I agree with the way in which they've done that? No. But I don't want the President of the United States picking winners and losers when it comes to media access. I know that they've made some decisions to include some non-legacy outlets in certain areas. I think that's great. I am always going to be of the belief that the more media, the better. The more access, the better. Some of it might not be my kind of quote unquote journalism, but I'd rather have them there than not have them there at all. And so the White House, and it's still unclear who sort of made this ultimate decision, but they appear to be engaged in retribution against the Associated Press because the AP won't call it the Gulf of America. Okay, so this is from Politico. The White House blocked an Associated Press reporter from attending President Donald Trump's executive order signing Tuesday afternoon. The news organization said after it continued to refer to the Gulf of Mexico instead of adjusting to reflect the administration's stance that the body of water should now be called the Gulf of America. Okay, so wouldn't let in the Associated Press unless they agreed to call it in their reporting the Gulf of America and not the Gulf of Mexico.
Did you notice your Google Maps on your phone changed?
I didn't look.
Oh,
that wouldn't surprise me. So a couple things. The Associated Press is a wire service. By now, I'm sure you know that. A lot of the articles that they write and that their reporters write are disseminated to newsrooms across the country. Same with the pictures they take, etc. So when you block access to the Associated Press, you're really blocking access to thousands of newsrooms, not only across the country, but across the world. I have an issue with that. I also think this is a very, very petty thing. So the Associated Press's executive editor, Julie Pace, put out a statement about this, saying it is alarming that the Trump administration would punish AP for its independent journalism. Limiting our access to the Oval Office based on the content of AP's speech not only severely impedes the public's access to independent news, it plainly violates the First Amendment. So now you could say, like, look, I don't like Associated Press. Why would they not call it the Gulf of America? When this decision came down from the Trump administration to change it to the Gulf of America, the AP issued guidance. So the AP does this because, again, newsrooms, a lot of them refer to the AP style guide, so that there is some consistency in how things are named, how things are written, even sometimes how things are spelled when there's a discrepancy. And if there's a question, newsrooms will usually go to what's considered the standard in the business of the AP style guide. So when Donald Trump made some changes to certain destinations and what they were going to be called, because there's two predominant ones we'll talk about, the AP issued its style guide recommendation. And in reading them, I actually think their style guide decision on this is really reasonable. And I don't have a problem with it. So they put this out again, this a couple weeks ago, AP style guidance on Gulf of Mexico and Mount McKinley. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. The body of water has shared borders between the U.S. and Mexico. Trump's order only carries authority within the United States. Mexico, as well as other countries and international bodies, do not have to recognize the name change. So the Gulf of Mexico has carried that name for 400 years. The Associated Press will refer to it by its original name while acknowledging the new name Trump has chosen. As a global news agency that disseminates news around the world, the AP must ensure that place names and geography are easily recognizable to all audiences. To me, that makes sense. It's been the Gulf of Mexico for 400 years. Mexico, other countries don't have to just suddenly call it the Gulf of America. So if you're living in a country that still calls it the Gulf of Mexico, and you have Associated Press in every country on the planet, I believe, save maybe like North Korea, then you're going to be like, okay, what is that? Or you don't know, and it's not called that, so it's weird. So they said what we're going to do is call it the Gulf of Mexico, but then we'll add an addendum that referred to in the United States as the Gulf of America. What's wrong with that, genuinely? Besides, it like hurts Donald Trump's feelings or something, or he's like, you're going to call it what I say you call it, whatever it is. So I think their style guide is good. And I would also note that they made a different decision when it came to Mount McKinley. Here's what they said then. President Trump also signed an executive order to revert the name of North America's tallest peak, Denali in Alaska, to Mount McKinley. Former President Barack Obama changed the official name to Denali in 2015 to reflect the traditions of Alaska natives, as well as the preference of many Alaska residents. Trump said in his executive order that he wanted to restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley. The Associated Press will use the official name change to the Associated Press will use the official name change to Mount McKinley. The area lies solely in the United States, and as president, Trump has the authority to change federal geographical names within the country. So the Associated Press has no problem with the Mount McKinley change. And they explain why it is and why it makes sense. I gotta say, not a big fan of the Associated Press, but when I read their rationale for both, I think it's well thought out and I think it's fair. And to block Associated Press reporters from access to an Oval Office event because they won't call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America is just absurd. And I think it's one of those things where, Donald Trump is doing so many awesome things. I don't like to see them distracted by these one-off kind of petty stuff. I get it, the Associated Press has been very petty to him, but he is the president of the United States. A lot of people still rely on the Associated Press and the reporting that it puts out to newsrooms across the world for coverage and access to information. So the more media, the better. You don't always have to agree with them, but I would rather have them there than not there. And I think blocking them out is just unbelievable. All right, let's see. We're going to get to some national news. Speaking of name changes, is this a real bill?
Yes, I believe it is.
There is a proposal to rename Greenland once the United States captures it. And I can't say I love the name change, but we'll talk about it anyway. If you're thinking about selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. I think right now a lot of people assume that the market is slow, but the real issue is inventory on the market, not low buyer demand. So homes that do hit the market are selling quickly due to that pent-up buyer demand, and there's limited options out there, so sellers face a less competitive market. It makes it an advantageous time to list, and the spring market is already kicking off, so it's a good time to reach out to Wes Jones and ask him for a free market analysis. You can also use their free home value calculator on their website to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. We hear so many good success stories from undivided viewers and listeners. Listener Sue told us she was hesitant to list her home in the winter months because of, things you hear about. That's not a good time to sell your home, but Wes was able to put her at ease.
It's time for me to go home, back to Wenatchee. That's where my mom is, and she's getting up there in age. So I need to help her and start thinking about my own retirement. So
did you feel like, get the sense that Wes had a plan, knew what he was talking about? How comfortable did he make you during the process?
Oh, he made me feel very comfortable. He answered all my questions and he responded to them by email or text, whatever I needed. Just kind of an extra helping hand here and there whenever I needed it. He was always there to support me, and his team is just wonderful.
Yeah, and he was able to get her home sold quickly for over list price. So win, win, win. Sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right, some national news. Oh, God. Okay, so a bill to acquire Greenland and name it Red, White, and Blue Land. Real creative. I don't know.
It's not green.
I see
not
that
very
picture.
green.
There's some green there. There's no reason when we take things that we need to change the name. Name's fine. Red, white, and blue land. It's very patriotic.
I just thought since we cover so many bills in the state, why not mention a national one?
Yeah. You know,
he wants to pursue it too. Part of the bill is pursuing
and I do understand from a strategic perspective having Greenland, so I'm all about that. I just think sometimes they get distracted by silliness. Although
they really do.
We did have a good time with the paper straw thing yesterday. That's not silliest. That is silliness.
Serious
that's
business.
A very serious thing.
Absolutely.
I just can't. I watched that clip so many times yesterday of the guy behind him laughing his ass off as Donald Trump and his. You know what was almost funnier is the guy who was deadpan.
Yep.
Mr. President,
Straight
we have
face.
an executive order here. It has to do with straws. These paper straws have left many Americans dissatisfied with their straw experience. And it's just like the funniest.
And Trump, and it explodes.
He said the paper straws explode. I'm like, explode? It's just,
I mean,
do they explode?
Pretty much.
It is. Are you not entertained? I guess, some entertaining things once in a while are totally fine. I called this one, didn't I? Oh, Eric Adams is going to get his charges dropped by the
you
DOJ.
called it.
100%. And I don't know if that was always the plan, but Eric Adams came out after the DOJ charged him and he started to ingratiate himself to Donald Trump. It was sort of slowly over time. He was pushing back. Well, first he was pushing back against, them sending all the immigrants, illegal immigrants to New York. And even though they're a sanctuary city, he said, we need help from the federal government. We can't do all of this on our own. He would speak out more and more about crime and Daniel Penny, And so it seemed like he was sort of getting red-pilled, although I wonder if he knew federal charges were coming against him for corruption in the corruption case. So he's like, I'm going to slowly start to cheer on Republican things.
Oh, yeah.
And then if Trump wins, I'm hoping that I can get a pardon from Donald Trump, but it might not even come to that.
He knew Trump was going to win,
right.
And he made a strategic decision
I think it was all strategic
to align himself.
Good for him, but it sounds like it won't even take a pardon. It says, New York Times, there's a push to drop Adams' charges. It says, reveals a Justice Department under Trump's sway. Eric Adams cultivated a close relationship with President Trump. Now, U.S. prosecutors in Manhattan have been told to drop the corruption case against the New York City mayor. I mean, good for Eric Adams. I truly do believe that was punishment for the stances that he was taking. The timing tells me that, the nature of the charges, which didn't even frankly seem that serious, and I hold politicians to a pretty high standard. It seemed like he was singled out to be prosecuted for corruption on a federal level for things politicians do all the time. And again, it just seemed like we know Democrats weaponize the judicial system. They were doing it, so it was just like, let's get this guy out of the way because he's pushing back against these things that bring a lot of money in for us or whatever it is. And so maybe he played Donald Trump like a fiddle. Maybe he knew Donald Trump loves compliments. He loves support or whatever it is. And so that's my ticket out of this mess. But now Donald Trump owns him now. If the DOJ drops charges against Eric Adams, Donald Trump owns him and New York.
Good, he can clean up New York.
Hopefully. Oh, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
All right. We dropped our first episode of Doge Watch today. I was very excited about it. So we've had Zach Abraham on the show once a week. Obviously Bulwark Capital is a sponsor of the show, but we wanted to do a weekly show just dedicated to everything Department of Government efficiency because there's so much going on. It's so entertaining. So Zach Abraham will be co-hosting our weekly show, Doge Watch, on this episode that dropped yesterday across all our platforms. There's no paywall. We talked about everything that Doge is uncovering and how it would be really insane if some criminal charges around waste, fraud, and abuse don't result from this. So here's a clip of our first episode of Doge Watch. People went to prison for COVID fraud, which I actually give the government credit for tracking down some of these people. I mean, we'll never see most of the hundreds of millions that got stolen from Washington State's unemployment insurance fund by Nigerian scammers because we fell for the oldest scam in the book, like I'm a Nigerian prince and I'm unemployed.
Inslee found a way to fix the budget gap.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I'm surprised he didn't have a news conference. He's like, hey, an uncle from Zambia just called me and let me know that, hey, Washington, we're back in the black, baby.
Yeah, 100%. They just said all I had to do is wire them $500 billion and then they'd give us the $14 billion back. And they haven't done it yet, but he's a Nigerian prince, so I don't think he's lying about that. But yeah, I mean, people are prosecuted for fraud, not as much as they should be, but it happens. I mean, you look at all the, like I said, COVID fraud. The FBI was showing up at people's doors to arrest them for COVID fraud, as they should. So certainly, I mean, even at a state level in Washington State, we've had criminal prosecutions of, again, not as many as there should be, of individuals who laundered money that were given grants to deal with homelessness or crime or whatever it is. So people who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing with the money that was given to them, as stupid as those funds, that fund allocation was, if they really mean it, it has to end in criminal prosecutions, because there's no way there's that much waste, fraud, and abuse without criminal prosecutions.
Yeah, you can't, right? Like you can't unfire that gun. And then the other thing is you're seeing the money being used to really push the very worst parts of who we are as a country around the world too.
Yep, the DEI, the radical gender ideology. It's like, instead of, let's spread the glory of democracy and freedom and all these things, it's like, no, let's go over there and help them pay for a trans story hour in some country that doesn't want it. Too much fun. I'm looking forward to it. So Doge watching the swamp closely. Every week, me and Zach Abraham will be posting across all our platforms. And of course, you can also listen to Zach's other show at knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com, where he does more advice on investments and things like that. But we love having him on. Isn't that not a good intro? The good music, it's very hometown.
Fabulous.
Oh, we wanted to capture the swamp. Doge in there, clearing out the swamp. So it's just a half-hour show, something fun to look at what's happening nationally. And we also talked a little bit about sort of waste in Washington state government as well. So check out the first episode. Let me know what you think. All right, what do we got coming up next? Let's do our daily subscriber show poll, shall we? So this has to do with the pay per mile tax. So which one do you prefer? You want to just keep going the way you're going, paying some tax at the gas pump to pay for roads, etc., or do you want the government to tax you for every single mile you drive? Nicole? I think I know the answer to this.
Oh, yeah. No, they are not going to know every single mile I drive.
No. I mean, if it comes down to a transponder, that's a hard no. But that's why they know. If they start with you have to have a transponder in your car, not popular.
Right.
But if now the program's implemented, well, now you have to have a transponder.
Right.
The law already exists. Now you have to have a transponder.
Right, because they'll just say, oh, well, people aren't being honest. It's everybody's fault for not being honest.
100%.
But I think that what it also does is gives, like, for instance, I often stop at the Angel of the Winds gas station.
You always talk about that one.
And so that, I mean, it's the cheapest gas in the state, I'm pretty sure. But then you don't pay the gas tax. There's a different thing with the tribes, right? So they're taking away any opportunity to kind of figure out how to pay or get around it. Or I'm sure there are lots of people in Pullman that go to Idaho and gas up and things like that, right? So they're taking away any of that, which, I mean, I understand we have to maintain the roads. I get that, but they're being sneaky about it. And this especially, they can't control where you drive. They are not going to consider when you're not driving in the state. They're not going to consider, when, I don't know. There's too many ifs, ands, and control things that I'm 100%. Like, nope, and it's just the start of something
I don't
bigger.
trust them to get rid of the gas tax. I don't trust them to ultimately have a replacement. You're going to end up paying both. 100%.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. They said, we'll reimburse you if you're paying the gas, then you pay it this way. It'll be a reimbursement. Did they do that with farmers and ranchers for the CCA yet?
We haven't figured that
one out. Remember how they weren't supposed to pay it? You still haven't been reimbursing them, and you still haven't set up that program, and it's been a couple years now.
And
it's interesting.
It's not one of Bob's top priorities, because that's not getting addressed. He claimed that was going to be a top priority, but we haven't heard anything about that one.
Not so much, just screwing over farmers and ranchers. Right. So right now, 90% of people saying they want to pay the gas tax. Steve Gordon makes a good point. The per mile tax is a workaround to get away from the protections of the 18th Amendment. Dems hate that they have to spend fuel tax exclusively on roads. And so that's one of the issues, I think, that we've said is the gas tax. That we're hindered in how we use that money. So if we do pay per mile, we use it on all sorts of things. It'll be great. Jim, if they're worried that EVs are not paying their fair share, why not just make it an EV tax? If you have an EV, you get the transponder automatically and are subject to this tax. Leave the rest of us out of it. Yeah, great. Leave me alone.
Except for that none of us would get EVs.
Leave me alone. Who wants it anyway?
Well, maybe the technology will come. I'm not writing off EVs totally. They're just not ready yet.
Yeah. Kevin Gaylord says, I don't drive much anymore, so per mile is fine without a transponder, and only if the gas tax goes away, which is not going to happen, so it's kind of a moot point or question. Exactly. And that's the thing is like, okay, if I'm, paying, but here's the other thing. If you've got a car and it's like, you get like 13 miles a gallon, like a truck, so you pay the same per mile as someone who has like a 40 mile gallon vehicle. Right. So you're putting like way more gas in, so that might actually save you money because you would be burning through more gas and therefore paying more at the gas pump. So if everybody is charged the same per mile, you might be in a situation where that actually saves me money if I do it per mile versus gas tax. But again, that's assuming they're going to get rid of the gas tax and they're actually going to reimburse you.
Right.
And how fast are they going to reimburse you? So you pay the gas tax all year, then you submit your odometer and you're like, I should be getting $400 back or whatever it is. How long is it going to take the government to write you a check? It's such a stupid idea.
I also think if they start here, they're going to eventually move on to, okay, so you have, an F-350 and it uses more gas. Well, then they're going to tack on charges for that.
Oh, 100%.
And they're going to tack on charges for, it's never ending. If you give them this little inch, it will be never ending.
Would you say if you give a mouse a cookie?
I would say that.
Yes, I would too. Maybe we need to send Jake Fye a copy of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, since this is his bill. Mm-hmm. All right, a couple more comments here on that one. Randall, I'm convinced that they will find a way to increase taxes no matter what happens. I don't mind paying taxes. I think it's my duty as a citizen, but it doesn't. Taxation is theft. But it drives me crazy to pay higher taxes when I see politicians pouring cash down the drain. I do think they have to find a way to charge electric vehicles a road tax. With self-reporting, I would expect at least 50% fraud. Yeah, and it is true. Like, I don't want all these leafy green Seattle hipsters to benefit from the roads that we're paying for. Like, no, it needs to be fair. If we all have to pay it, it has to be fair. But that's why they've implemented the fee when you go to register your vehicle. You register an EV, there's a fee associated with that. I don't know how much the fee is.
Oh, it's a couple $100. Somebody sent us their printout because it was a couple $100, and then on top of the Sound Transit fee, it was their renewal for tabs was like $600 or $700.
Jesus,
and it's supposed to be $30.
Jeepers creepers. That's just crazy. I'm right outside the RTA, so my taxes, my thing's actually pretty reasonable for renewing, but I still go in there and I'm like, what is the one where you do a minus? No, I'm not contributing to that. You have to actually subtract it. What is that again? Is it for parks or something?
Well, the Parks Pass.
No, I pay for that every year because I do want that, the Discover Pass. But there's one where it's like you actually subtract $5. You have to actually. I don't want to pay for that.
Oh yeah,
I'm not giving the government any extra money for anything.
I know. I'm very surprised that Alaska Airlines added that option too,
where
you can add to whatever climate, blah blah blah.
We have to talk about that sometime.
Heck does that?
We have to talk about that sometime because literally, I was talking this other day when I went to DC. You can choose to offset your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And pay hundreds of extra dollars to Alaska Airlines to offset your carbon footprint. How many people actually do that? Have any of you ever done that?
I want to know. I hope Jay Inslee has.
Oh yeah, Jay Inslee's for sure doing that.
Like. I actually doubt he does. Nobody does that.
I'm kidding. Of course he doesn't do that. He wants all of us to pay for his climate grift. He's not paying for it. All right, let's get to some comments. Bill Biz, the $20 super chat. Remember when Americans looked upon media outlets in totalitarian countries with disdain? Legacy media in blue jurisdictions doesn't look much different. I agree. It's like they will trip over themselves to help Democrats out of a pinch. Matt Gilbert, $5 super chat. When I was in school, there were PSAs about adults who say, this will be our little secret to kids. Now it's school policy. Yeah.
It's true.
John Salapka, I'm beginning to think politicians should have a mental health evaluation before taking office and every year thereafter. Rick Johnson, we all have responsibility to protect children and future generations. Yeah, I agree. And this stuff is common sense and it's government overreach, and you have to stamp out government overreach wherever you see it, whether you're a parent or not. Old Sub Sailor, I still don't understand what the Dems' end game is. How can they believe the issues and positions they push and support and have any moral standing? Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Baron of Gray Matter, drive backwards and get a rebate. Genius. I would just wind back, on the skeezy used car lots. I've seen it on movies. I don't know if you can do this. You use a little... They're like, I don't know, something's not right here. It says you haven't driven this car in a full year. That's right. I just parked it. Yes. Yep. Deb ZJ, they will still tax gas even if they manage to pass pay per mile. The state of Washington never gives up any money. Again, I've always made that argument about the income tax. in theory, I do believe the income tax, our tax system is regressive. I do believe that it burdens poorer people more than it burdens rich people. There's no possible way that anyone could factually deny that. But they pass, and they continue to pass, all these regressive taxes. So they complain about it, then they pass the regressive taxes anyway. And now if they were going to get rid of the sales tax, the gas tax, and implement an income tax, and you did the math and it was sort of the same for every household, but it wasn't as regressive, you might be able to sell me on that. But they're never going to get rid of these cash cow taxes. Any tax they pass is going to be an and, not an or. An and I don't trust them as far as I can throw them, which, as I've already pointed out, for Bob Ferguson, I think I could throw him pretty far, and Jamie Pedersen as well. They're slight men, and as we've talked about, I'm got a record in Minnesota for squatting. So I've got a lot of, you just lift all with your, not that I'm going to throw anybody. I'm not throwing anyone, just in case the cops are watching. No violence. It's
just a hypothetical.
It's all in theory. Greg, why would you pay for a Discover Pass? Paying to use your own public land, just another tax. Well, because my option is either pay it or
pay more in a ticket.
Get a ticket.
Or lose your license.
So I'm not planning to do that. Pam Pope, our license plates have transponders with our newer cars that must have... You guys got to work on these. Our license plates have transponders with our newer cars that must have now. They can't they invade our car's privacy already? I don't know. They might be able to.
I mean, she's right. I was thinking about that. In our car, all of our cars track where we're going, so that if we're murdered, they know where we were. They can track our car and where our murderer was or whatever it was. But anyway, right now there's blocks, so they can't get that information. Yeah. But yes, it's something like this. You're opening the door to giving them that information.
100%. It's all about
right
what
now.
comes
You need
next.
a warrant. You won't. Eventually.
You always have to think about what is next. Like Dory did, he was the best at that. Mm-hmm. This is now, it might sound palatable, but what comes next? It's never enough. All right, good comments today, everyone. Yay. Now I want to play let's sanity check.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to our
show
closing
moved
sanity
right along
check
today, right?
Sometimes you hear something from an elected leader and you just know in your heart that their political star is rising. You just know this is someone who could be the president one day. This is someone who's really going to make a mark on the world. And I have to say that is not the case for Oregon Congresswoman Maxine Dexter.
I've been told I have 30 seconds. So I am going to tell you that we do have to... I don't swear in public very well, but we have to Trump.
Yay! Yay! Yay!
Please.
I'm so hip.
Please don't tell my children that I just did that.
Oh, your children will find out. Oh, good times. That has been our sanity check for today. I didn't peg her as someone who would be attracted to Donald Trump in that way.
Right. I think he'll pass.
I don't know much about the guy's preferences, but I'm going to go ahead and say, on behalf of the president, no thanks. That has been our sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. A reminder, go check out our first episode of Doge Watch. We had a lot of fun putting it together. We'll have those out every week. In the meantime, if you have not signed up to support our show already, why not? $5 a month. I mean, God, you give way more than that to the government, and we're trying to get the government to give some of it back to you. So undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, and just click on support the show for $5. There's a handy little button on the website, and just click it. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for our final live show of the week.